So if you haven't been living under a rock, you know that Apple shares have been dropping and it's all over the news.
Let's hit Apple now because it is the stock story of the day and what's pressuring the NASDAQ. Reports China is banning the use of iPhones by government officials, a ban that some warn could grow.
Talking a lot about Apple shares. They've been under pressure this week on reports that Chinese officials are asking government employees to stop using iPhones.
It dropped all the way from $190 per share on 5th of September to $175 per share on 7th of September. Now that's actually quite a big drop for just 2 days. Now this drop kicked off when there were reports from the Chinese government that they're going to stop using iPhones. But as per usual, there was always more to the story. Now before we get to that, let me tell you, the stock market is not based only on facts. The stock market is controlled by the people. It is very important to distinguish this fact. Just because a company is making a ton of profit in a financial year does not guarantee the fact that it has high share prices or that the share prices will continue to go up. There are a lot of human elements that come into play, just like this Apple story. And not just that, a lot of people holding the small quantity of shares like you and me, we tend to read only the news headlines. We don't read in detail. We don't try to understand what the big picture is. We don't try to understand what is going to happen in terms of the company Apple as a whole. So in this case, headlines started reading things like Apple stocks crash due to ban on iPhones in China and so on. But that's not really the case. What actually happened was that the Chinese government said that government employees for work cannot use iPhones. The employees themselves are not banned from using iPhones. They are just not allowed to use the iPhones for work. Now, is this going to reduce the volume of sales for iPhones? Yeah, sure. But by what quantity? By what rate is it going to affect the profit of Apple as a whole?
So in my opinion, based on all the work we've done, I believe this is bark a lot worse than a bite. I mean, when I quantify it in terms of what this could be, I've heard some of the numbers out there. I think worst case, we're talking about 500,000 units relative to what's going to be 45 million units sold in China.
We have to understand that Apple sells a lot of products. They have the Mac computers, they have iPhones, they have iPads, they have accessories like the AirPods, the chargers, and so many more things. Now, is it possible that the Chinese government changes their mind tomorrow and broadens this? Yes, it is possible. Can they say none of the government employees are ever allowed to use iPhones? Yes, it's possible. Can they say China as a whole country are not allowed to purchase new iPhones? Yes, it's possible. It's all possible. Anything and everything is possible. But in general, if you look at the history, Apple and China have had a very good relationship, and whether it's going to happen or not is a completely different story. If we look at it from that point of view, none of the companies will ever have any share value because there's always going to be fear of something that may or may not happen. We can only look at what is going on right now and what is actually going to happen for sure in the near future. Of course, this is not the only thing that's affecting Apple shares. It is also in the back of people's mind that iPad and iPhone sales have been slowly declining, especially when it comes to iPad sales. But here's the flip side to it. If you don't know already, today was the launch of the new iPhone 15. I don't know what they've announced because I'm recording this video a couple of days before that announcement, but it has been rumored that the new iPhone 15 will have an increased price when compared to the iPhone 14 series.
When you look into the next year, you're going to have, call it, mid-single digit iPhone growth from a unit perspective based on all of our checks coming out of Asia. You have an ASP now, which is actually lifting. That'll be the big thing next week with iPhone 15.
There's talk that they'll raise it.
And we believe a $100 price increase, really first time in years.
Now, just because there is a reduction in the quantity sold, does that mean the increased price will not offset that and therefore make the profits as expected? Yes, of course, there's a chance of that. Is it possible that quantities sold actually increase? Yes, it's possible. But is it possible that just because the iPhones are now more expensive, it's less accessible to people and quantities drop a lot more than we actually think? That's possible as well. The point I'm trying to make is that it doesn't really matter about this whole Chinese government news. The fact is, in the next couple of quarters, if Apple doesn't manage to sell enough phones, then the stock price is going to go down. Having said that, in spite of the Chinese ban, is it possible that Apple actually increase their iPhone sales quantities? Yes, it is definitely possible. So it is difficult for us to justify this drop at the moment. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to that human mindset. None of these things matter if people are in fear, people are afraid of what might happen. Any little thing, any little news that may negatively impact their financials, people are starting to panic and sell off their stocks. We have to understand that we need to look at the big picture and understand if the company has a good outlook over the next 5, 10, 20 years, and if the management team, the board of directors, the CFOs, the CEOs, the MDs and so on are able to get out of these challenges and guide a company to success in spite of many challenges that any company will face over the course of their existence. We have to know that all companies face challenges, some big, some small, and not all of the challenges that they face are necessarily because of their own doing. There are a lot of external factors and they can't really help it except to adapt and figure out a way to get their company out of trouble. The point of this video is to tell you, don't try to time the market. Don't purchase shares based on news articles. Don't sell off shares based on sudden news announcements. Try and be invested in companies for the long run that you truly believe in. I know it's scary to see the stock price drop from 190 to 175 in just a couple of days, but if you look at the 6-month chart, you can see that just on 10th of March, Apple shares are actually trading at just 148. And if you look at the 1-year chart, you can see that Apple shares dropped all the way down to 125 on 5th of January. And if you look at the 5-year chart over the last 5 years, Apple has actually gone up on 4th Jan 2019 from $37 all the way up to 175 at the time of making this video. But you can also see in the chart that over the course of that run from 37 to 175, there's been a lot of peaks and a lot of valleys. So we have to understand that when there are these valleys, maybe it's time to invest a little bit more, or maybe it's time to just hold, but it's probably not the time to sell because of panic. Now smash that like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.